I love the Boondocker style service boot. I love service boots overall, and the White's MP boot is still at the top of my charts for me. But that US Marine subset called the Boondocker, or the Navy Field Shoe, is also one of my favorites. How you going? Welcome to my channel about heritage boots called Bootlosophy. And if you're new, my name is Tech. I'm on Luosjiet country here in this corner of Western Australia, Kalikul Luosjiet Nongabuja. Here are my Boondocker boots, or Boondocker adjacent boots, as testimony to the fact that the style that attracted me to boots was the service boot, and in that general area, I was also really attracted to the Boondocker. I will briefly introduce you to them as they represent various price ranges, and I have reviewed each of these, so you can go and check my channel and search for these boots for those reviews. I've also put their websites down below if you want to check them out. But first, what is a Boondocker? Now, I've got the following information from the website usww2uniforms.com, and if you're not the wandering through websites type, here's the basic summary. Firstly, it is officially called the USMC Field Shoe, adopted in February 1941. The Navy version was the Field Shoe Type N1. But that one usually had a rivet at the corner of the quarters. They acquired the nickname Boondocker when used by the Marines stationed in the Philippines in 1941. The Tagalog word bundok meant mountain or remote area, and the Marines adopted this into slang as the boondocks to describe any rugged, isolated or jungle terrain. Wearing their new field shoes in these areas, the Marines turned to call them their Boondockers. They are iconic as part of the USMC's uniform throughout the Second World War. The new field shoe at the time reintroduced rough-out uppers, last seen by servicemen in the First World War, and replaced the grain leather of cordovan boots called garrison shoes, which were issued in the intervening war years. They incorporated full rubber soles and heels, and combined with the rough-out, they vastly improved durability in the field over the cordovan garrison boots. They were made of the flesh side of the leather turned out, and the grain, smooth side, on the inside. The color of the rough-out varied from a light beige to a darker tan or even brown. Some of these boots were pre-treated with a waxy covering before issue to servicemen, but many were plain rough-out, and they were all supplied with a tin of dubbin or greasy wax for the Marines to apply a coat over the rough-out themselves. This was intended to waterproof the boots and prolong life. The pattern was a higher top shaft, increasing the garrison shoes 5 inches to at least 6 inches. They used 8 eyelets, no speed hooks, with flat cotton laces threaded through them. The quarters were attached to the vamp with quadruple stitches. The rear backstay panel is a single piece of leather that cups the heel and goes up the back of the boot. The toe box was a plain toe shape and unstructured, so that you can see many original photos where the toe boxes look well collapsed. The last used had a round toe with some version of a chisel toe after it had collapsed. They were constructed using the mass production Goodyear welt type of construction, with a 270-degree welt running around the front 3/4 of the boot. The soles were made of a leather first full slip midsole, and then finished with a rubber outsole and rubber heel. The outsoles and heels were made of scrap rubber interjected with scrap cording to lengthen the life of the soles and improve grip. The sole pattern showed a variety according to makers, from a pattern cut into the rubber looking like a V-bar sole to a rope-like pattern for grip. Okay, so now let's take a look at these one by one. This is the Golden Fox Boondocker, made by Golden Fox, an American brand. Remarkably cheap, $139. I got this $139 US dollars. The style is kind of a Boondocker style, but it's slightly different. It is called the Boondocker, and the similarities are the fact that there are 2 quarters and a plain toe. The toe is slightly more rounded than what you'd expect out of a Boondocker, and it's constructed using a 360-degree Goodyear welt construction. It uses a plastic welt. At 139 US dollars, you're kind of looking for some of these corners to be cut. But it is quite a reasonable looking welt, and at least as good a plastic welt as, say, a Thorogood mock toe. It is a storm welt. There's a little lip coming up to it. And the other difference with a couple of other differences with the Boondockers, you don't have that Boondocker style backstay. It's a single piece, very thin backstay that curls into this ridiculous pull loop that you can't even get your little finger into. Otherwise, it's a very light colored suede with a very light tongue and with some lace keepers cut into it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 brass all eyelets. I really like this boot. When I started my boot journey, I really looked for this boot, and they were available in the crazy horse color and in the brown full grain leather. But this sort of Boondockerish light sand suede wasn't available for 2 or 3 years. And I only got these about 2 or 3 years after I started boot collecting. And by then, I'd had so many boots that I bought this just for the sake of buying them. And I'm afraid I don't wear them very much, and it's likely that I'll be selling them. So keep an eye on my website or reach out to me. Let's take a look at the next boot. This next boot is the Craft and Glory Boondocker. I know it's in green. I chose it because I thought, well, I had too many tan sort of roughouts and brown roughouts, and I quite like the color green. But much to my dismay, after I bought it, Craft and Glory told me that they'd actually bought an original Boondocker last, and they'd bought the original Boondocker patterns. So if only I'd actually bought the sandy colored one, or the slightly tan one, because that would have been a lot more realistic than green, of course. But ignoring the color, let's look at the shape and the design. So as I said, this is built on the original Boondocker last, and you can see the sort of almond shape of the toe that is unstructured, and when it collapses, gives you that sort of boondockery chisel-shaped toe. Very interesting in that. The pattern, as I said, is also a Boondocker pattern, and you've got that cupped backstay that goes up the back, single-piece backstay. It has 7 brass eyelets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all eyelets. The quarters are not triple stitched. They're I think they're double stitched. I don't think they're triple or quadruple stitched, which the original Boondockers were quadruple stitched. Other than that, it's a very faithful reproduction if you ignore the color. The sole is interesting because they use a Dr. Sole-like sole, which gives me a really good grip in these boots. And it is a 270-degree Goodyear welted construction. So overall, if you get this in the tan, this is really very similar to what the original Boondockers would have looked like. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. This is the Luosjiet from China, TG Escape Boondocker, or the Great Escape Boondocker. Interestingly, while not built on the original Boondocker last, this one probably looks most to me as a Boondocker, other than the method of construction. Firstly, the color is right? The Craft and Glory in green kind of doesn't follow the same vibe. But if you look at this collapsed toe, and I've worn it a bit and it's collapsing, that really looks like some photographs you see of US Marines wearing these things in the field. Also, they do have that quadruple stitch at the quarters, and they do have that Boondocker single piece backstay that cups the heel. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, also 7 eyelets, not 8. And they have a tongue that's sort of in the grain side out rather than the rough outside. This is in one of their China tanned leathers. I think it's the reverse of their lychee leathers, but it's a really nice rough out leather. Really soft, really comfortable, slightly shorter than what I would expect Boondockers to be. I did say it's a different construction from an original Boondocker. It is stitch down construction out here at the front. So that's a stitch down stitch there with a double stitch, the second one going down through the outsole. It has a leather, veg tan leather midsole, and on top of that a rubber outsole with a sort of V-bar pattern and a single rubber heel, quite a flat sitting one. And this one is most similar to the original Boondockers as a sole because they do have corded pieces stuck into the rubber, as you can see. And as these wear, I'm expecting some of that cord to show under the heel. So really comfortable to wear. It just feels more boondockery, I think, than the Craft and Glory Boondocker, even though that was built on the original last. It's funny how perception puts a picture in your mind. All right, let's move on. This next boot is not a Boondocker, but it is Boondocker adjacent for a couple of reasons. Firstly, the color, of course, it's rough out in that sort of light tan color. It's a plain toe, which is very Boondockery. It does not have that single piece backstay. Like the Golden Fox, it has a single sort of thinnish backstay without the cupping of the heel counter. Otherwise, it's a Goodyear welt construction with a storm welt, leather midsole, and a full slip rubber outsole, very day-night-like, stacked leather heels, and a day-night-like top lift. This is Parkhurst's Allen boot, and in this design, in what they call Dune, which is not available on their website at the moment, but does come back from time to time, it looks very Boondockerish to me. It's in their 602 last, this one, but it does provide you with that sort of almond toe, although it is structured, so it won't collapse like the other two that I've shown you that are Boondocker and called Boondockers. It has shiny brass hardware, 5 eyelets and 3 speed hooks, which is again not very Boondockery, but unless you're playing very, very strict repro World War II uniforms, this is good enough, and the shape and look of it, I think, is really rather pretty. Sells for around $400 US. Not in stock at the moment, as I said. Very comfortable boot, particularly with that combination last, and it will appear on the website from time to time, so keep an eye out on it if this interests you. All right, moving on. If you're an Aussie, this next one might be a bit more accessible to you. This is another Boondocker adjacent boot. It's not a Boondocker. This is, believe it or not, a pair of RM Williams. It's one of their lace-up boots. Now this is called the Rickaby. They no longer make the Rickaby. They now make something called the Rigger as their lace-up boot. And as far as I can see, it's the only lace-up boot they have at the moment. Don't tell me what the difference is, other than a couple of stitching changes. It looked exactly the same boot to me, maybe slightly taller. So the Rickaby, and maybe the modern Rigger, came in this sort of tobacco suede. And the Rigger currently has one model, but they do often frequently replenish the line. Again, it's Boondocker adjacent in not being a Boondocker pattern. It has a very lightly structured toe, as you can see. It doesn't use a plastic. I think there's a little piece of thin leather in between the lining and the actual suede. So it does collapse a little bit, but it doesn't collapse as much as the Luosjiet or the Craft and Glory. It does not have a backstay like a Boondocker. In fact, it doesn't have a backstay at all. It just has this one seam up the back with the heel counter on the inside. It does have a 270-degree Goodyear welt with a leather storm welt going through there. And then under that is a rubber outsole with no midsole and a stacked leather heel and a rubber top lift. The rubber outsole is proprietary by RM Williams and is in that V-bar, Vibram V-bar shape with a longhorn top lift. I do like these boots. They're very, very comfortable. They are very comfortable as casual boots, as well as being out in the sand and the desert. I took them out to Western Victoria once, walked around in the sand and rocks there, volcanic rocks, and they stood out really well. Couple of nicks, but you know, they sort of kind of brush off, and if you use a suede brush, they eventually brush off. But a good solid boot. All right, let's sum up. Before we finish, there are other brands that also make Boondocker or Boondocker adjacent boots. To start with, there's the reenactment suppliers, like At the Front, and there are several others. I'm not sure what the quality is. In the boot world, there are some brands with high-priced models. Viberg make the N1 at $1,300 US. Oak Street Bootmakers of Chicago make their field boot at a more affordable $500 US, but they go on sale now and then. John Lofgren make pre-order MTOs, N1 boots for $900 US. Japanese maker the Real McCoy have a pair, I think it's $2,000 US. Yeah, you really want to have a pair. I've never tried John Lofgren or the Real McCoy, so I can't speak to them. But Oak Street Bootmakers are good quality, especially if you catch them on sale. Viberg, well, personally I think they're great quality, but $1,300 US, well, that's all I can say. So there you go, folks. I thought I'd take you on a tour of my Boondocker or Boondocker adjacent collection. The Golden Fox was a boot I searched for when I first started my boot collecting. They never had my size until much later, and with so many other lovely boots and my more recent Boondocker purchases, I'm actually selling them. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. You know what to do. Subscribe, comment, and click on like. Until next time, you take care out there. It's a very difficult world. See you soon.